my name is Alicia. I'm an exercise physiologist from NeuroMoves in Melbourne. I started out at NeuroMoves Adelaide, but then transferred over to Melbourne in 2021. So I've been at NeuroMoves for about 4 years now, and I've been able to work with some really incredible clients with a real range of different neurological conditions. So yeah, that's me.
So today we're going to talk about strength work. Alicia, how does strength training work?
So strength training, I guess, is like the overarching term for, a lot of different things. It looks very different for different people with different conditions, but essentially the whole overarching message is just improving your strength. Lots and lots of different ways that we can do this. We can use different sorts of equipment. We can use dumbbells, TheraBands, we can use machines, we can use free weights, we can use body weight. Lots and lots of different ways that we can do this. But strength training is super, super important for so many different things. Like, it really translates into really functional activities. So, improving your upper body strength, like your shoulders, your triceps, your arms, can really help you then to improve something like your transfers or your ability to propel your wheelchair or any of those sort of activities.
For people who don't have much strength, so I don't know if we're going to talk about, and this is something I chatted to Colby about in the episode that we recorded, but whether or not it could be because of, I don't know, the type of SCI they have or condition they have, or even for people who have acquired their disability later on in life, like an SCI, and so their arms are not fully built up and ready for the amount of, strength they actually need. What sort of approach do you take?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about this, and I think it's a pretty common misconception that you need to be strong or have a certain level of strength to do strength training. I know when I was at uni and I was learning about strength training, I was like, oh, big deadlifts and big muscle, that are really big movements, but it's really not that in all cases. So there's lots of different ways that we can address strength training with people with limited mobility, limited strength, or limited activation of their muscles. So we use the term across gravity. So there's something like, if you imagine, we use something called a slide sheet. So it's like a really slippery piece of material that we fold in half, so it has no resistance. We can do stuff like different sort of arm movements across gravity, so that's requiring just movements like a horizontal plane, so you're not having to lift your arms, for example. So something like that for upper or lower limbs can be really, really helpful, because it can just sort of start to get some of that base level strength happening. We also can utilise things like FES, which is functional electrical stimulation, which just sort of helps to give the muscles a little bit of a boost. It pretty much just applies an electrical impulse to the peripheral nerves, which sort of results in a bit of a muscle contraction. So it can be really, really useful in people with neurological conditions that really have, a bit of an impairment with their voluntary muscle activation. But, even just something like a body weight exercise. When we say body weight, we just mean moving your arms or legs in a specific way without any added resistance or any added weight. And then, I guess once you start to build up that bit of base level strength with some of those things, we can add things like dumbbells or wrist weights, ankle weights, TheraBands, like some sort of resistance. Keep challenging and progressing your strength.
Using your body weight as a strength, as a strength exercise, is very underrated. I don't know about you, when you were talking about how, you need to lift the heaviest weights, you need to do the most stuff, but your body is already so many kilos. You may as well utilize it, hey?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And that's something like, for example, when we've been working with clients in the gym and we're trying to work on specific muscle groups to help with, let's say, a transfer, one of the best ways to do that as well is actually getting the client to practice that skill, because they're having to lift their whole body weight, and by doing that, challenging their upper body, challenging their strength, improving their strength. So yeah, obviously there's different ways to sort of go about it. We would still do our stock standard strength of different muscle groups, but then performing the actual task itself as well with just body weight is, really, really beneficial.
So when people come to you at your job, they want to try and build strength. Every condition is different. Every disability is different. What's the recipe, I guess?
So I think it's very dependent on clients' goals and, of course, their condition and their current capacity and all of that. But when it comes to, I guess, programming, if someone's really trying to improve their strength and their power and really wanting to increase the amount of resistance they can move, essentially, we can do something like 3 lots of potentially like 6, 8, 10 reps. Something around there is going to be beneficial. It's pretty much whatever I guess they can tolerate at the time as well. I guess if they were looking at something more like wanting to improve their like endurance, so being able to move, you know, a certain amount of resistance over a longer period of time, we would do something like 3 lots of maybe 12 to 15, or, you know, sometimes if I'm in a real nasty mood, 3 lots of 20. Like, it really depends. I have clients all the time, they'll be like, 20 is obviously a number of the day. I can just go through phases, but, you know, it's really like dependent on, I guess, what their goals are and what they're going to actually need to do to get those goals, if that makes sense. Something around that 3 lots of sort of anywhere between 6 and, you know, maybe 20. I guess in terms of how many times a week, we sort of would say 3 to 4 times a week potentially, again dependent on the client, their condition, their capacity. But another really big thing to note is that it is important to give your muscles time to recover as well. So it's always good to leave at least 24 hours in between working the same muscle group, sometimes 48 if you are pulling up really sore. Because I think it can be really challenging to be really sore and then try and do exercise again. And you're like, I'm already, you know, first set and I'm already shaken. So it's good to have a rest.
Especially if you're like super new, doing brand new exercises as well. I like when you're talking about endurance exercises. I'm a huge fan of endurance exercises because for me, there's things like aging. There's things like my body is not the same as it was in my 20s and it won't be the same in my 40s. And so when people talk about recovery and rest days, and like, tell me a little bit more about how rest works for the muscle groups and why it is so important.
Well, I guess a couple of things to consider when it comes to rest and recovery. So that sort of 24 to 48 hours can just give your muscles a bit of time to actually recover and repair. So it's actually really interesting the way that strength works and muscle strength works is that sounds kind of concerning, but it's not. It's almost like when you are exercising and doing strength exercises, you cause little micro tears in your muscles. As they sort of heal and sort of develop, that is what results in like a larger, stronger muscle. So it's almost like you have to cause a little bit of damage to the muscle so it can repair and get stronger. So I guess giving yourself that rest allows for that to happen. But it's also really important to note that for that to happen, you need to be eating properly, you need to be having enough protein. They sort of say the 30 minutes after you finish exercise is the best time to eat a lot of protein, because that's where your muscles are really going to uptake it really well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then another thing is sleep. If you are not sleeping enough or getting enough high quality sleep, it's going to be really hard for this process to happen as well. So, sleep, nutrition, hydration's another big one. Need lots of water. You just have to really support your body sort of in the best way that you can to get these results.
I always feel like I learn something new on this podcast, even when because I always try and treat these podcasts like I don't know anything and we're all just learning new things. So yeah, the 30 minutes after exercise protein thing, good tip. Do you have any examples of different kinds of conditions or disabilities that you've worked with that have seen different kinds of progress through different kinds of strength training? Do you mind sharing some stories about that?
One of my spinal clients, so an incomplete, what level is he? He would be about a T4 incomplete client. So when I started working with him a couple of years ago, he could stand at the parallel bars. He could sort of hold the bars, pull himself up, and he could stand. We would need to sort of still lock out through his knees. So we would have our knees in front of his knees with like a little pad in between, just sort of help them stay extended, you know, over time. And we do lots of sort of like sit to stand. So you're really challenging the glutes and quads and different variations of, you know, we've had him on the, we call it the TG, the total gym, which is essentially like a sort of an incline platform that come up and down, and we can do stuff like squats on there and all sort of different exercises. He has sort of progressed to the point now where he can stand in the bars without any assistance on his legs. So he's able to sort of lock his knees in and then sort of extend on his own. So showing really good improvements in his quads, in his glutes. We've also done heaps of work with him with, you know, like therabands, like with loop therabands around the knees, doing clams and all that sort of stuff for glute activation. But I guess that's an example of how, you know, some strength training has transitioned into something a little bit more functional like standing. Like he's really improving his independence with his standing. So another one actually that I can think of is another spinal, but she's a bit of a higher level. I think she's a C7. Done lots and lots of work with her on upper body strength, so lots of sort of big compound movements with different sort of machine weights. This has translated really well into her being able to work a slide board transfer more effectively, so she's more comfortable being able to sort of prop herself up on her hands and really get that bum lift and press herself up and get a little bit of a shuffle across. So that's translated really well into her independence at home, and it's been really sort of great progression for her.
So let's just say people like cannot access places that have accessible gym equipment or the right kind of if for the job. What do you recommend they do at home?
Yeah, well, I guess my perspective is always something's better than nothing. So, if you don't have access to, a certain facility or to certain equipment, just doing something. So whether this is if you go grocery shopping and you would only have one bag, maybe instead of putting it in the trolley, try and walk half the way carrying it in one hand, swap hands, and then walk the other way, because that's an exercise that's called like a farmer's carry, so that's really going to challenge your core and all of your muscles that stabilise your back and your posture. So I've seen people over telehealth who've done different sort of strength exercises and they've used like a bag of flour or a can or a book or anything. I've actually seen someone use their cat before for some lifts, and I'm like, look, if it works, that's fine. So you can use pretty much anything that's a little bit heavy. I've seen people use drink bottles, move it around, do some bicep curls, press it up over your head, lift it out to the side, just lots of different planes of movement. And just do it as much as you can.
I was going to ask, how do you facilitate strength training over telehealth?
Yeah, so telehealth is a great option for people that maybe can't access a service, or, some clients that we work with do telehealth because they really struggle being in the car or being in a taxi or whatever that sort of is for them. But, we can sort of assist clients to get some equipment for at home as well. So, they can utilise the NDIS funding for something like a packer TheraBand, some weights. I've got a client that has an arm bike at home, so we can do some stuff with that. Yeah, I've got a couple of clients that I work with over telehealth that are quite independent, so they're able to sort of set things up on their own. They don't need any assistance with grip, so they don't need like active hands or any grip gloves to help. Even if you don't have equipment, we can still make it work. I've had clients do sort of push-ups off the edge of their kitchen bench and lift up their drink bottle and all those sort of things as well. Another one though is we do have clients doing telehealth that have a carer with them, so we can always direct the carer to assist us and always make them be our hands in a way. So I'll just sort of say, look, can you just pop your hands on the client's shoulder there and just make sure she keeps her trunk up nice and tall, or of course we're always there supervising and giving those instructions, but it can just be really nice to have that little bit of extra support for mostly those clients that need, a bit of grip assistance and all that sort of thing. So yeah, look, strength training has a real range of benefits, and I've sort of mentioned before that it is quite dependent on the person and their condition, but might just go through just some of the main benefits. So obviously the first one, it's going to help improve muscle strength and endurance, which is quite a given. So it's just really going to help to improve your muscles, improve their activation, improve almost like the coordination of your muscles contracting as well. And this is going to lead to things like increasing your joint stability, so doing lots of different, upper body exercises, for example, lots of like TheraBand exercises. It's going to really improve your shoulder stability and what we sort of would call like your shoulder health. It can help to reduce something like muscle spasticity. So, sometimes if we can strengthen some of those weaker muscles, it can help with like the control of them a little bit as well. Another big one is improving your cardiovascular health. So sometimes strength training that's done in the right way can actually be quite hard on your cardiovascular system, so it's going to cause, a bit of that huff and puff, get the heart rate up. And like I've sort of mentioned, all of these things are going to sort of lead into that improvement in like your functional independence. So targeting different sort of functional movements, whether it's your transfers or being able to put your shopping away or put your shopping into the car or put your wheelchair into the car or whatever this, or worked with a client before that wanted to be able to hold their newborn baby, so we do lots of exercise, getting him holding dumbbells and all of that sort of thing. Another really big one, which actually is really important to touch on, is like pain management as well. So I think a really, really big misconception, and something that I've come across a lot in my time across the years, is people will be like, oh, no, I can't do that, like my shoulder hurts or this hurts. And I think it's really important to educate people that like pain doesn't always equal damage. It's just sort of those alarm bells and your body's just going, oh, something feels weird. But I think the most important thing to do is to keep it moving, keep it strong, because if it's strong and supported, the pain's going to decrease. So it's really, strength training is really, really beneficial for something like pain management.
This year I've gone through possibly the most I've ever had sporting injury wise, right? I've never I'm recording this now. I gave myself whiplash doing dance performing that is ongoing at the moment, right? Well done me. And
far out.
Yeah, I know. And so like I've done, you know, I've done some damage to my shoulders. I've done some damage to my back from endurance, wheeling, all this other stuff, right? And I was told at least your pain is due to activity rather than doing nothing at all.
It's almost that fine line between, like, you know, I guess someone like you that is so active, like you don't want to get any of that like overuse sort of injury. So that's where something like your rest is quite important, and your nutrition and hydration. So hopefully you are doing those things.
Sure, Alicia.
I'll keep naming you to do that. But yeah, and you know, I think that's the whole thing. As long as you're looking after your body the best way that you can. Biggest thing is that exercise is so safe, and you know, we're never going to get clients doing anything that we don't think they can do. Like, we're never going to push anyone to that limit, although I'm sure lots of my clients would feel like they're almost there, I guess. But you know, that's the whole point. You know, you've got to be pushed to a certain capacity so that your muscles can improve and get that strength benefit. I think another thing with pain, and something that I've definitely witnessed a lot in some of my clients, is sometimes, you know, someone will feel a pain or something and then they almost go into like a bit of an avoidance state, and they're like, I really don't want to move that, I'm going to just keep going to the shoulders because I guess it's the easiest example. And like, I don't want to move that arm, I can't do anything with that arm, it's sore, I'm not touching it, blah blah blah. But I think it's really important to remember that if we, you know, leave the shoulder and we don't use it, it's just going to get weaker and weaker and weaker, which is going to probably contribute to more and more pain. So I think it's really important to, you know, make sure you're working with someone that does understand, I guess, that pathology a little bit. You know, it's important to keep building on that strength of that sort of pain area, because if we just leave it, it'll get weaker, sorer. So, you know, really trying to work back into that strength to really just try and build up that, you know, that joint stability and that range of motion, and all of that's going to be really, really important. And I think just in general, like, you know, if you think of what you do in a day, like all the different movements that your body is doing, if we can replicate some of that in the gym and strengthen some of those movements, everything you do is just going to be that little bit stronger, that little bit more supported. It's going to decrease your injury risk. Like, you know, I saw a video the other day of even just like putting on a seatbelt, and that's like that rotational like exercise where you rotate and you pull, and it's like, oh, I do that exact exercise with clients, like at the cables or on the reformer, and bending down, picking up the shopping. I'm like, oh, that's like a deadlift or an RDL, or, you know, picking it. Like, you can just really like pinpoint different activities and different exercises and just get that greater level of base strength. Then every movement you do in your day-to-day, it's going to be a bit stronger and your body will be more supported.
So before we wrap this episode up, is there anything that you want to add as a final thought?
Yeah, I think another thing just worth noting is, you know, I have lots of clients that, you know, for example, have come in, let's say just to NeuroMoves for like their first assessment, and they see all the gym equipment and they're like, oh my gosh, like I can't do this, I can't use this. But, you know, there's so many amazing pieces of like accessible equipment out there, like all of our gym equipment, the little seat swings in and out. We can change, you know, the distance of the, you know, let's say the chest pad, like the, what do they call it, like the handles, just to, you know, suit people's different body shapes and sizes. And like I sort of mentioned before, like an active hand, which is like a grip glove to assist your grip. So there's lots of different ways that we can work around, you know, people's capacities. The biggest thing I want, I guess, as a bit of a take home is that you don't have to be strong to do strength training. That's the whole point. And it can start off being super, you know, low intensity, like just with that body weight, with slide sheets, with, you know, maybe a bit of assistance from FES or whatever that sort of looks like. But yeah, you don't have to be a big, strong gym person to do strength. You know, I think it's for everyone, and it looks very different for everyone as well.